Okay, so let's start by talking about the culture of the 1950s. It's a really good picture of a family, and everybody's together, and people start getting these televisions. And television is really kind of killing the radio in the sense of now people watch TV instead of listen to radio all the time. So these radio voices on RKO and Orson Welles and Edward R Murrow, they're going to either have to transition to television or they're going to kind of become antiquated, and people aren't going to hear them as much. Not that radio ever goes away. We still have it today. I love my NPR, but the television definitely changes everything. Now, television then is very different than television today in the sense of we've moved to this Netflix world where like you guys can just watch Netflix or Disney or Hulu and watch pretty much any shows whenever you want. And if you pay enough money, you can watch it without commercials. Well, back then, everything was either live or it had to be played at that time. So if you watched a show like I Love Lucy and it was at 6 o'clock, it'd be on 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern, an hour difference, and everybody had to watch it at the same exact time. So you can see here some information about households. Really, only 10% of people had televisions at the beginning of the 50s. By the end of the 50s, almost everybody had a television. 86%, almost 100% of Americans had televisions. And then ended up in more than one room. And they would end up in the kitchen. They end up in the bedroom. And now today you have this world of everybody's got a TV in their bedroom, which I don't think it's a great idea. Psychology showed that if you have a television in the bedroom, you don't sleep as well. It can affect your circadian rhythm. But the stories go that some shows are so popular, like I Love Lucy was like the biggest show probably. That there was literally times where the sewers would, in the Metropolitan Sewer District would overflow, uh, and I want you to guess why. Why do you think it? What does that have to do with television? Well, the reason they would overflow is because when everybody would go on TV breaks, okay, so it was a commercial break, you'd run to the bathroom, everybody would flush the toilet and wash their hands at the exact same time. Well, that would back up if you had like a million people in a city all flushing the toilet at the exact same time, and the sewers couldn't actually take all that water. Now we're going to talk about a guy that really utilizes uh, television, probably not for good reasons, most people would agree. And this is Senator Joseph McCarthy. He is very, very famous, very important, and he taught us a very important lesson. Actually, I don't know if any of you guys have ever read The Crucible, the book The Crucible, which is about like hunting down witches and how everybody's kind of selling each other out. That is actually written and based on what we're about to talk about, the McCarthy trials, and how Joseph McCarthy put people on trial, and we're going to find out why. So Joseph McCarthy was a Republican senator. He's from Wisconsin. He created a fake list that accused famous people of being communists. And this list kept changing. That was one of the indicators it was obviously fake. It would be like, oh, I got 100. I got 100 known communists. Now 200. 200. He's got kind of a grasp voice. 200 communists. And his list just kept changing. And he's just giving all these names, and people are on trial. And it's all completely fabricated. Like he made the whole thing up. It was giving him celebrity status, fame. He was becoming a well-liked, supported Republican senator, well-respected because he had evidence that he was telling people that the communists had completely infiltrated the United States government, and they were in the military and television, everything. And this list just get bigger and bigger because people start selling each other out. Somebody be like, I'm not a communist. It was this guy was a communist. And up until World War II, communism and socialism were actually becoming pretty popular. Like people were starting to talk about these ideas of government, a bigger government that supports people, especially during the Great Depression. So it wasn't completely unheard of that if somebody went to college or they're more educated, that they might have went to a communist meeting or a socialist meeting. So people would be like, no, 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 I'm not a communist, but Jeff's a communist. He went to a socialist meeting. And they start throwing everybody under the bus. And to be honest with you, in some ways, while it wasn't against the law to be a socialist or a communist, this was like devastating because it was against the law to be a spy, but it was devastating. People start making accusations of each other. And there was, if you had a red car, you're a communist. That's a serious accusation people would make. And they would start blaming each other. People are afraid of who's the communist, and they've all snuck in here from the USSR. Are they working with the U.S.? They're spies? Are they bad people? How could you believe in communism? Horrible things. Because you have to understand, communism, if you remember, is really just the idea that you have a classless, moneyless society. It's like ideal utopia, where the government is just keeps everything equal and fair. So there was a lot of people, especially people of color, African American intellects, are very involved in the communist movement in this at this time as well. Now, McCarthy conducted court trials that accused thousands of Americans of being communists, not hundreds, thousands. So this thing just gets completely out of control. It goes over an extended period of time. People's lives are destroyed. In some ways, it's almost better to just go to jail. Because if you're a communist, you would lose a job. Your kids would get beat up on the playground. Seriously, like your dad's a communist, and they'd fight and beat you up at the playground. Your whole life was ruined. People wouldn't want to hang out with you if they thought you were a communist, because if they hung out with you, then maybe they'll end up on Joseph McCarthy's list, or people think they're a communist. It destroys many people's lives and worlds. And McCarthy is ruthless. He has no qualms about leaning into people and just insulting them and going after them. And people are really scared to push back on this guy, because what is he going to do? He's going to call you a communist, and he's going to destroy you and your family. So you don't want to mess with this guy. And this just gets completely out of control. And then you can see there he is. He's yelling at the trials. He's actually an alcoholic. We're going to find out what happens to him in the end. He had a real drinking problem. Not the nicest of people. So we call this McCarthyism. McCarthyism was the practice of making accusations of disloyalty, subversion, or treason against Americans without proper regard for credible or believable evidence or probable cause. That's why it's so important that you guys understand that. I hope you're reading valid or invalid sources in your books. So when I give you websites, make sure they're valid or credible. If anybody shares a website, use what's called horizontal reading. Open up another tab and just Wikipedia at least. Where is this company or this group coming from? Are they conservative? Are they liberal? Are they a business that wants to make lots of money? Are they a church group? Who are they? Are they a credible source? Are they a university, which is really their goal is to just publish information and research? Or are they a non-for-profit research organization? Those might be much more valuable or valid sources as well. But this is the story we need to learn from. McCarthy just gets out of control. And it really is not until later, and this guy here, his name is Edgar R Murrow. And I'm sure you've heard this name. If any of you guys are into journalism or newspapers and being a good reporter, this is the guy. I mean, he is one tough dude. So what Murrow does is that he's not, and it starts out with Welsh, but Murrow starts saying, hey, McCarthy just keeps calling everybody communists. I'm not so sure that we should just assume that's right. And come to find out, he called them out publicly on television. People said, look, this is crazy. You shouldn't do this. This is a bad move. He says, no, it's not. So Murrow is the most famous news reporter that challenged McCarthy's lies throughout the trial. I mean, Murrow was a big deal. Murrow was in World War II and the Great Depression. People knew Edward R Murrow. They trusted him as a journalist. And when he got on television, he was very passionate about what he said. I want to show you the video. Not in here, though. And he says, he uses the fault, dear Brutus, is the stars is not in the stars, but within ourselves, which is from Shakespeare's famous play of Julius Caesar. And it's this idea that the fault isn't in the stars. We blame it on everybody else, that McCarthy's doing what he wants. It's because of us. We're letting him do it, not because other people are letting him do it, or we can deflect blame. And that's what McCarthy says. And he really shows how powerful good journalism is. And that's actually the award to get. If you want to be a journalist, you want to get the Edgar R Murrow Award. It's like the highest award you can receive to be a journalist in America. And it works. Welsh is one of the generals. He starts turning on McCarthy, and he says, look, you're destroying people's lives. What you're doing is wrong, and I want to see this list. And then journalism, finally, after Murrow, they start challenging him, finding out that McCarthy was in fact a fraud. He was a complete fraud, and he was lying. And in the end, McCarthy would actually die of uh, liver disease as an alcoholic, and he had a rough ending. He only lived about a year after they found out that he was lying, and Murrow became one of the greatest journalists of all times.